K. Subramanyam is now with us. Subra, you saw the F&O data for Aurobindo Pharma that we just put. So delivery marked was 36 lakh shares, but the open interest addition was just 2.5 lakh shares. But earlier, when I checked yesterday afternoon, it was a minus figure. So it's safe to assume that there was some short covering and then fresh long happened in that name?
Well, very much, as you said that, we have had some severe shorts in the entire pharma space has been the victim of some pretty aggressive shorts, and Aurobindo Pharma was no exception. So it was quite natural that on the back of, some, support coming about closer to, some sort of support levels, we have seen some sort of short covering coming about. And of course, the news flow needs to be a little more supportive for the entire pharma industry. Yesterday, of course, we just saw some, some sort of minor additions to the open interest. But broadly, as you mentioned, I think the shorts are still there, and but closer to levels of I think 600, 625. Again, we could see some sort of selling pressure coming about. But the entire pharma space actually is showing some signs of bottoming out. So that could be some heartening signs for the entire industry.
Right. What are your top picks?
Well, to begin with today, we have 3 buy calls. To begin with, buy on AB Nuvo. Now, that has seen some, very steady movement, and it's given some sort of breakout. So, probably could be heading to levels of 1725, target of 60, stop loss of 1620. Second one is Ashok Leyland. Now, this has been trying to break past 90 for quite some time now, and yesterday it did show some signs that probably now it's 90, 80, 85, 88, 90 could be some sort of a base. This could possibly be heading towards the 3-figure. 102 is the target, and one could keep one could buy with a stop loss of 85. Third one is India Cement. Again, has seen some aggressive shorts coming about. Probably could still could advance further to levels of 212, and maybe one could keep a stop loss of 196.
All right, let's also welcome in Rohit Srivastava, fund manager at Sharekhan. Good morning, Rohit. What are your top picks for the day?
Well, we are particularly looking at maybe a rebound in some of the mid-cap names, the PSU banks that have fallen so sharply. But then these would be probably just 1 to 2 day kind of very short-term moves. Overall, I think the trend is down for that segment, so you'll have to be very, very careful. For slightly the medium term, I'm still looking at the potential for the metals and commodity related sectors to actually pick up, essentially on the back of a weakening dollar that we see around the world. So these are a couple of trends and moves that we'll be tracking.
Right. United Spirits is one stock that will be in focus. They declared numbers. Good set of numbers. One would say volumes were slightly lower than anticipated or in line for the prestige segment. But the PAT number or the EBITDA number was very, very strong. Margins expanded quite significantly. Sales numbers slightly lower. PAT numbers slightly higher. That was because of better EBITDA. That is the EBITDA for you, 265 crores. It's a very strong performance. And in a while, actually, you have seen this sort of a performance. Prestige segment volumes were up 5%. Prestige segment sales is volumes plus the realization increase, which means price hike was 5%. Volume number you can see at the bottom, which you can remove from the 10%. It will give you the realization number as well. Overall volumes, that's the overall volumes, is a minus 8%, but it was expected to be down about 9%. And margins came in at 13.2. The expectation was 11%. There was some solid cost control that the management had shown, and that's why 13.5% higher for this name. Let's just also look at one corporate action that the company has delivered. So they have gone ahead and signed out a franchisee agreement for their popular volumes in few states. Now, the dates of these are different. So, some states are from 1st April, some states are from 1st June. So these are the various states. You can see Pondicherry over there, Andaman and Nicobar, Chandigarh, Rajasthan, MP, Uttar Pradesh. All of these are states that they have signed these agreements. Why this is important is because whenever the prestige volume grows up, if you have a franchise, you straight away get a royalty or a fixed income on that number. So it's always a better asset-light model that the street would look at. United Spirits will be a stock that will be in focus today. Subra, any view on USL?
Well, Pankaj, I think very difficult to spot underperformers in this market, but this has been one quarter which has been underperforming in the last few months. But interestingly, it has formed a very strong base, 1800, 2000, now seems to be a very good base in the last, if you see over a period of 5-6 months. And assuming that the disappointments are behind us, I think this is one stock probably could be advanced because once we have a very strong promoter entering into, they're also sort of doing a lot of revamping in the country in this particular company. So I think odds are high that the worst is behind the company and we could see some uptrend coming about. So a modest target, I think one could see it advancing up to levels of maybe 2500. But I think broadly I would expect some good days ahead for the counter.
Right. One could see the stock to go to 2500 from 2000 rupees. That's not a modest target. It's a 20% upside, 25% rather.
I think, I mean, that's the sort of, if you recollect, I think 3-4 years back, we had some pretty aggressive, buybacks coming from DIG, if you recollect. So from that aspect, I think if you have one sharp quarter, I'm sure you'll have some very good re-ratings coming about. And as I mentioned, I think the bottom seems to be in place and we could see some decent upside. I mean, over a period of 1 year, I think, 15-20% should not be a big surprise.
All right, another counter to watch out for will be Jet Airways. It came out with their earnings which is slightly below estimates. We got profit at 36.8 crore rupees, so a big drop in profits, down 90%, and top line growth was just about 3%, so it was below estimates. EBITDA came in at 109 crore rupees versus 656 crore rupees, so big drop in EBITDA as well, and the margins coming in at just 2% versus 12.4%. Rohit, your view on Jet Airways, it seems to be finding some support around 460, but it is amongst those mid-cap stocks that have corrected when the markets are making new highs. What would you do with this stock?
Well, one of the primary drivers, I think, for Jet was essentially oil, and I don't think the pressure from oil prices will go away in a hurry. We've recently seen a correction in oil prices and they've started to rebound again. So I think in the coming weeks or months, I would expect oil to actually move up to $58, and that would continue to be a pressure point. So I think unless that changes, it's hard to really see the airline stocks do essentially, very well. So it's a segment that we would probably avoid for the time being.
Right, avoid Jet Airways. That's the view Rohit has. Let's talk about a few more stocks that came out with their earnings and will be in focus once the markets open. We have IIP Infrastructure. It came out with a strong set of earnings. We had profit at 207 crore rupees versus 157 crore rupees, a jump of 32%, top line growth about 5%, EBITDA margins too expanded to 50.5%. Then we have Tata Global. They came out with with a reasonable set of earnings, profits coming in at 84.3 crore rupees versus a loss of 250 crore rupees. Total income also higher at 1,674 crore rupees. We had EBITDA higher at nearly 179 crore rupees. The margins were nearly flat at 10.6%. Then manganese ore, we got earnings from them. Profits are very strong at 115.8 crore rupees, a jump of 400%. The entire mining space has been one where we've seen increase in realizations because of price hikes. EBITDA also coming in positive at 121 crore rupees versus a loss of 5.7 crore rupees. Then we had MTNL. They posted a loss of 634 crore rupees versus a profit of 188 crore rupees. The revenue is also lower at 705 crore rupees. They had a EBITDA loss of 264 crore rupees. So a dismal set of earnings from MTNL. For Delta Corp, sales higher at 113 crore rupees. Profit after tax so fell 60% to about 11.3 crore rupees.
Right, these were all the stocks that will be in focus, large cap ones and the mid cap ones also, which Anisha just took us through. Rohit, what's your call on the markets? Where do you think Nifty is going, especially the correction in mid cap? What do you make of it?
Yeah, so I think the month of May was essentially one where you had a pretty steep correction in mid caps, and I think you're starting to see some rebound from that. I'm looking at the mid caps only doing a retracement of the sell-off that we have seen, not really running into new highs. I think the only area of the market which is not seen a decent correction is essentially been banking. So if there's any correction to come, then it's probably in the banking sector, because we saw the Nifty pull back a bit in April. We've seen the mid caps pull back in May, and I think that leaves banking as a sector to get some kind of a reaction in the coming months. So I think that's the area where you would see some risk. But purely from a Nifty point of view, we've seen it run up for a couple of days and then consolidate for a long period, and then again run up, and that's been the typical behavior of the last 5 to 6 months. And so we've seen a pretty sharp run up in the last 2 days. It looks like we'll probably again go into some kind of a pause or consolidation on the Nifty. I'm not looking at it significantly beyond 9650 right away. And probably on the downside, 9450 would be the initial first support, below which only we would take a further downward view. So that gives us a 200-point kind of range for the market to really move in.
Subra, in terms of F&O data, what do you expect?
Well, Pankaj, I think right from the beginning of the series, the band seems to have shifted upwards. I mean, last series we had the put rating taking place on 9200, call rating at 9500. Now the band has shifted. Now it has gone up all the way up to 9700. So I think, and on the lower side, even 9400, yesterday 9500 also saw some sort of strong put rating. So I think the market is sort of more or less taken heart to the fact that we are in a very strong uptrend. And of course, near term, if you look at the charts, they give some sense that some could be overbought. But again, banks could hold the key. I think yesterday we had a bankers meet, and even this series, even the rolls seems to suggest that the banks could hold the key, because the private sector banks had some pretty decent rolls, and the PSUs had some very bad May month where we saw some huge corrections. So the downside could be limited. So if anything comes out of this banking meet, my sense is that this pack would again lead the uptrend, and we could see some sort of short covering coming about some of these PSU banks, and private sector banks have already again since the confidence or rather preference coming back for in terms of buying.
So what would be your preference, PSU or private names?
Well, for a trading bet, maybe a PSU, but even if I have to go for some long-term call, probably again a private. But again, the valuations are pretty steep, and one has to keep some pretty stiff stop losses.
Right, Rohit. In terms of PSU banking names, do you think that large cap names can take the markets higher?
Not really, because they don't really have so much weightage in the index. So, earlier I was speaking about the possibility that you get a correction in banking, and I think that would essentially come from the large names, not from the small names, which is the private sector banks that have been actually running up one-sided. And on the other hand, PSUs, which have actually fallen pretty sharply, I think in the last 2 weeks, could actually see a rebound in the next couple of days. But I will only call it a rebound, a kind of retracement of the sell-off, not the start of major uptrend. And once that rebound is done, then we'll probably look at the risk reward to be on the sell side again. But from very, very short-term perspective, I think I would expect a move up in PSU banks and probably a move down in the private sector banks.
Right, just about 20 seconds remaining for markets to open, so we'll see what happens. A lot of companies in terms of numbers. Anisha took you through a whole host of mid-cap names. United Spirits will be in focus. A lot of companies like Aurobindo, M&M, where numbers came out yesterday or details came out yesterday, they did react, but again, there is some positive commentary which is coming from brokerages. So these are stocks that may be in focus. Result season is largely behind. Today, you only have Castrol that declares numbers. This is the market opening for you. Aurobindo Pharma was the top gainer yesterday. It's up 2 rupees right now. Cipla is up about 4 rupees or so, and Dr. Reddy's is doing well. So all out, a decent opening for the pharma pack. Eicher Motors 75 rupees higher, ACC absolutely flat. Hindalco 1 to 2 rupees higher, 204, and ICICI Bank at 320. ICICI will be in focus today. I told you about the MSCI rejig or the flows. Those flows come in from the start of today. Mahindra and Mahindra for you, 1398. Decent set of numbers and a good outlook is what most of the brokerages are calling M&M at. Aurobindo Pharma is now down 3 rupees. NTPC is flat with a negative bias, and Bharti Airtel is up 2 rupees. Vedanta, ITC, no news flow, but very, very marginal negative bias. Tata Motors, absolutely flat. Bank of Baroda up around 0.3%. That's United Spirits for you, 4.5% higher, 1281 for United Spirits, 4.5% higher from the first tick. That's doing decently well, 2190. Jet Airways, that was a miss on the numbers. Let's see what the stock is doing. 2% decline. I think the miss was more than that, but maybe markets looking at Interglobe, some of the other numbers did get a sense that, this is coming in. IRB Infra numbers were okay, but I think there was some deleveraging exercise as well that took the stock higher to about 1 to 2 odd %. So that's a name that has done well. Let's also look at some other names. Tata Global would be reacting to numbers. It's up close to about 2 odd %. That's a name which is doing well at this point of time. Tata Global Beverages, 1.5 lakh shares already traded. Moil reacting to numbers, 5% higher, 338, 339 for Moil. So that's a company that is essentially doing well right now. It's on the basis of numbers that you're seeing this company do well. MTNL is also a stock that is reacting to numbers, but it's not a very frequently traded counter, so it's down 2%. Delta Corp, 2.5% in terms of gains. That's broadly what's happening on these names. Anisha, any other names that you can pick up?
Yes, on the gaining side, Moil, manganese ore is up 5%, strong set of earnings. United Spirits is up 4%. We have Mahindra & Mahindra and M&M Financial Services, both these counters doing well with gains of about 3% or thereabouts. We are seeing MBL Infrastructure, IRB Infrastructure also move up well with gains of 2.5% or thereabouts. On the losing end, today we are seeing Kohinoor Foods down 12%. So on high volumes, something happening here, and Kohinoor Foods down by 12%. Jet Airways is down 2%. MTNL down 2%. Aurobindo seeing a little bit of profit taking, but that's about it. So these are some of the stocks that we are watching out for. Rohit, do you have a view on L&T? Its chart looks good. It has been moving up, but a day earlier it saw a huge swing in prices. Where do you see the stock headed?
No, L&T is, I think, among the few stocks that are holding out better and probably likely to continue to do well. We've seen just a reaction yesterday. Before that, I think we saw 3 to 4 days of gain. So probably yesterday's reaction is just, a pause in the overall move or profit booking post the results. But it's still above the 20-day average as of close yesterday, which is essentially a very good support, and that makes the risk reward, to the upside good. So probably if you say around 1750 to 1730 as a support range, I think the upside could be as much as up to around 1900 for Larsen.
Okay, 1900 possible for Larsen. What would you do with ICICI Bank, Shubhra? This one has been doing well. It only consolidates, doesn't even correct too much. What levels do you see this going to?
Well, Anisha, this is one counter which actually been holding up the market, and it has managed to scale some pretty strong resistance levels. But I think if I were to put uptrend, probably the next resistance comes to closer to the levels of 335, 340. I think we could see that level coming about sooner than later. Maybe closer to the record date, etc. I think that level is possible. So, as you mentioned, lower levels buying is coming, and definitely one of the strong counters where one could look to accumulate.
Right. Subra, United Spirits has opened up 6.5%, 7%. After this, this move that you've seen, you've already, of course, given us your targets in the near term, 2,500. Any reason to change the view or anything that you would want to highlight after this opening?
Well, Pankaj, the only thing that I would like to add is that I hope you don't have anything coming about where, disturbing trend where because it is prone to some sort of, sell-off at higher levels also, because we have seen this happening in the past. Of course, currently it looks to be in a very strong, pretty decent uptrend. So my sense is that I think yesterday's closing 2100 could be the near-term bottom, and if it consolidates around this levels, I think we could be heading upwards. Right.
Mahindra & Mahindra is up 3%. Again, that's a company that would be reacting to numbers, or the second day into numbers. What's your call over there?
Well, M&M, I think, seen some. It's more of on a recovery path, and it has not exactly been a stock which has, been doing very well. It is trying to do some sort of catching up. So my sense is that I think there's already talk about some better performance because of the improved outlook in the monsoon, etc. But any uptrend probably could carry up to levels of maybe 1400, 1425, where I think one could look to book some profits and probably wait for some correction.
Right, but again, these are names that have underperformed, and then you have results which are good. So it's still not very overowned. So chances are that they could go up further.
Well, the near term, I think the market, now that it is moving up more on some expectation. So I think at high levels, we'll have the profiting coming about. Then it will be interesting to see where exactly this, again, the buying emerges. Even if I have to take a call on a M&M, if I have to put a figure where I would be comfortable buying, it's around 13 or 13.25. That's at 200 DMA. I mean, that's the level where, one could possibly expect some sort of, pretty strong buying coming about. So current levels, yes, it could carry up to levels of maybe 14.25. But I would be a bit cautious on this heavyweights.
Right. Rohit, what will be your call on M&M Finance? That's a stock which is up 4%. It's led by, of course, an upgrade which is coming from Morgan Stanley today. But can you just tell us what's your view on this name?
No, I don't really have a view on M&M Finance.
Right. Any other NBFC that you track?
Not really, no.
Right. In terms of, the large cap movers, if we just look at, what's happening, can you just tell us oil marketing companies, very, very different views, different results coming in from different companies. What's your call on IOC, BPCL, maybe HPCL as well?
Well, longer term, I continue to be positive on that sector as a whole. But near term, I think there's room for them to correct, consolidate a bit. So not looking at too much downside, but I'm not looking at an immediate move or a takeoff in those stocks, right away. So you probably want to wait, let them pull back a bit, and then, look at the right entry points for the next move higher. So in the short term, I don't think there's a takeoff, but eventually I think they will pick up again.
Right, but these are names which have been structurally different versus the markets in the last 2 years. So they continue to have that strength.
Yes, that's right. So they are in longer term upward trends. All you get is that after you've had a significant rally, you are likely to see some kind of a correction or a consolidation to that rise. Before you can make another one. So you saw that even interim, around a year or so back, you had a pretty steep correction in HPCL, and then you moved on from there. More recently, you've had a pretty steep move in, say, IOC, which has been catching up with the rest of the sector. So there again, we would probably look at a pullback. In fact, we've made a house call to, move it a notch down from, in terms of our fundamental rating. So but I think the long-term trend essentially is intact. So it may have moved up a lot. You'll probably get a pullback, and then you'll look at an entry again.
Right. Reliance has done well. Oil marketing companies have done well. Do you think ONGC will play a catch-up role, Rohit?
No, I think ONGC continues to remain an underperformer. You might get some trading moves there because it's seen a steep cut, but I don't think it's likely to catch up in a big way in terms of starting a completely new trend on the way up. And so apart from some kind of a trading play, I don't really see too much upside on ONGC.
Right, but that's a name which is a big name. It's very well tracked. Still, you don't expect any major buying in this name? Just because of the sector is doing well, it could attract flows, or that will purely be very short term?
Yeah, I think it would be very short term. I mean, the main attraction, I think, is in the oil and marketing companies. They are the ones where the big gains are coming, and it's likely to be that way.
Right. Also, if I just look at the pharma pack, yesterday there was a bounce back led by Aurobindo Pharma, some of the other names. Do you think it's just a bounce in a correction or a trend which is changing, or what essentially is the level to watch out in the pharma space now?
Yeah, so I think this bounce that you're seeing is from very, very oversold conditions, because I think this month you saw one of the steepest declines in the pharma sector. But having said that, I don't think it's a long-term bottom yet. Of course, in our last few discussions, I was mentioning that, there's one more decline, and probably after that you start looking at pharma. And you've had a steep cut, but I think the next move up, when you get it, probably after maybe a little more dip, you'll get a bounce back, you'll get one more dip. And if you do see a meaningful rally after that, again on a long-term basis, it may not change much, but it could be decent. So probably if you're taking kind of a 3-month trade or a 6-month trade, you might actually find the pharma getting attractive on every dip from here on. But that's about it. I wouldn't take a 2-3 year kind of a call on it yet. Probably from a 3-month kind of rally, you could get a good buying opportunity from here on the pharma stocks, because they're very, very oversold.
Right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out time for us. Always good to get a perspective from you. Rohit, before we go, any disclosures?
No, none of these stocks, I think, that we discussed, we have positions. We are in some of the sectors that I've mentioned.
Subra, for you?
Well, the views are similar to what we discussed. Personally, I have no holdings.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out time for us.